Welcome to Week in One, the show that helps you catch up with the top news stories and interviews featured on eNCA over the past 7 days. I'm Heidi Jokos. Let's get straight into this week's top stories. All 8 accused in the Thabo Bester escape appear in court for the first time this week. The next witness in the Senzamere murder trial objects to her testimony being recorded. Floods wreak havoc in the Eastern Cape. And the battle of the presidents continues in court. Thabo Bester, Dr. Nandipa Magudumana and her father Zolile Sekeleni will be back in court on the 20th of June. Bester and Magudumana appeared virtually in the court on Tuesday. eNCA senior reporter Slindelo Masikane was there and filed this report.
It was a brief appearance for Thabo Bester in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court. He had his hair cut and was dressed in a Burberry hoodie that cost 17,000 rand. In a surprising twist, his lawyers told the magistrate that the court should be furnished with documentation confirming his identity.
What we wanted was the court to be satisfied that indeed we have the right person before us. That's why the council said, is there any form of documentation that can actually confirm that indeed we have the right person? We were actually taking it from that angle. But it seems as if the court had a different view, even though from our side we feel that there is no information, nor any document that can actually confirm that we have Thabo Bester before us.
Dr. Nandipa Magudumana also appeared briefly. Her appearance was also virtual. Magudumana's lawyers also agreed to the postponement of the main matter for further investigations.
Look, the matter has been postponed to the 20th of June for further investigations. We'll be coming back on that day to see if the investigations have been concluded.
Bail proceedings continued with the defense cross-examining the investigating officer.
Colonel, you have testified, right, that no witness said they were threatened. What in your investigations says they will be threatened?
That is according to the information that I got. That informed me that accused number 1 has a link with the gangs.
And you did not find this prudent evidence to lead when the state prosecutor meticulously took you through your evidence?
I did not go in depth as the prosecutor had guided me, that I should only highlight how each accused person was linked to the crime.
The bail hearing for the 5 co-accused is expected to resume on Friday. Slindelo Masikane, Bloemfontein in the Free State.
Can grilled chicken and diamond rings make a prisoner's life easier? Well, apparently that's the price Rajiv Narendas, the mother of convicted murderer Rajiv Narendas, says she had to pay. She claims a senior Westville prison official demanded benefits from her for over 2 years. eNCA senior reporter Desan Thathia brings us this exclusive story.
Rajiv Narendas was once a popular Durban socialite and businessman. But in 2016, he was sentenced to 18 years imprisonment for murdering a man outside a nightclub 9 years earlier. Since then, the convicted killer's mother, Rajiv Narendas, has been trying to make his life at Westville Prison as comfortable as possible. Over time, an odd relationship developed between her and one of the prison heads, resulting in a direct line of communication between them. Now, the Correctional Services Department is investigating whether any benefits were received by the official and to what end. According to a sworn affidavit in eNCA's possession, Narendas alleges she feared for her son's safety under that employee's control. She further claims she acceded to all requests he made because he had previously proven he could move Rajiv Narendas to different sections if and when he pleased. We have tried to contact Rajiv Narendas and a close friend mentioned in the statement, but neither has responded. We've also unsuccessfully reached out to the implicated official and outlined the allegations via SMS. The Correctional Services Department won't say much just yet.
The Department of Correctional Services is aware of the allegations leveled against one of our officials. It's a matter that we're busy with. There is an investigation currently ongoing, and at the right time, we will make a statement detailing the outcome of that particular investigation and if there are measures to be taken pending on the findings.
The employee, whose conduct has previously been criticized by his subordinates at both Westville and another facility, is currently still at work. I'm Desan Thathia in Durban.
Heavy rain has once again wreaked havoc in the Eastern Cape this week. Several metros have been badly affected by floods, including OR Tambo, Buffalo City and Nelson Mandela Bay. Pupils in Gqeberha continue to bear the brunt of the bad weather and have been forced to relocate. eNCA's Ronald Masinda reports.
Pupils from Charles Duna Primary School in New Brighton had to be sent home earlier this week after their school remained waterlogged. The school's governing body chairperson, Lizo Nzuzo, says municipal workers also refused to help with the drainage after they complained about not being paid for working overtime.
They came in, they saw the situation, that it was bad, because we wanted desperately to be in school today. So they decided to tell us that they are not going to be paid for overtime, so they have to leave.
The lack of effective stormwater drains in parts of Nelson Mandela Bay Metro has delayed plans for reducing flooding. The municipality says efforts to improve affected areas are ongoing.
Mop-up operations are continuous going on. Firstly, there were big problems on Sunday, and municipalities, all different departments, the water, the sewer departments, the roads and stormwater departments with disaster management work together to obviously alleviate the localized flooding that has taken place.
The Eastern Cape has for several months been hit by floods, with some schools have been destroyed, resulting in disruptions in learning. The recent heavy rain in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro has been described as the worst since 2012. It is now hoped that things will return to normal at schools so that young people are no longer deprived of their right to learning. Ronald Masinda, Gqeberha.
Stay tuned to Week in One. Coming up, we look at some of the big interviews done by anchors this week. Welcome back to Week in One. I'm Heidi Chokos. The Senzamere murder trial has stirred public debate this week when the next witness objected to being recorded. Legal expert Zola Majavu says there's no merit to a trial witness objecting to being recorded. He spoke to eNCA anchor Masego Rakhlaga about this.
Just firstly, does she have any base, especially with the state saying that she only let them know last night about this objection?
Firstly, it is not open to her to decide the conditions under which she will testify. The fact of the matter is she remains a compellable witness. So if she decides, if her conditions are not met, that she's not going to testify, she can be compelled to testify, and there's nothing she can do about it. She will have to comply with the court order. Secondly, remember that as we speak, all the defense counsel are already in possession of her statement, if it's a she. So it is of no moment for her to say, I can only comply through audio recording. The fact that our open justice in society requires that is also buttressed by the right of the media for freedom of expression. And she also belatedly informed the state last night. Who does that? The court's processes do not work on the basis of our individual whims. In any event, these proceedings have been televised live. The court can give certain conditions, for example, to say her face may not necessarily be beamed. but the coverage can be live. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Other witnesses have testified on that basis, so I cannot imagine that her request or her conditions have any merit. And I'd be surprised if the judge were to allow that. But we have to respect the fact that the judge is yet to make a decision.
The state then saying to the judge in response to his question on whether or not, what would happen rather if he decides that she must testify in open court. The state's response being that she told them that she'd have no choice but to stand down. Is that even enough for the state to say that? It's their case. Shouldn't they use their power to subpoena a crucial witness?
You don't have to be a lawyer to know that whoever is to testify, especially as part of the defense, the state's witness, is compellable. If she does not want to testify, well, it means that her testimony would obviously deprive the state of its ability to prove its case. And the onus rests on the state and not on the defense.
Short-term insurer Sasria's recent retraction of a notice that it wouldn't cover claims linked to civil unrest has been heavily criticised. It's also sparked discussions around South Africa's risk management and insurance landscape. eNCA's anchor Gareth Edwards spoke to Volker van Vidden from Risconet Africa about the issue.
What do you make of this move by Sasria?
Sasria has retracted the notice and wants to have further consultations. I think the principle is that Sasria has already been told that by their reinsurers that they will not cover civil unrest and related activities following grid collapse. So if Sasria wants to cover it, then it will not have reinsurance cover. So then Sasria followed that notice by issuing the same notice to the market. The question is that the right thing for South Africa, and is that what Sasria is obligated to do in terms of its formation? So of course it took the market by surprise. The grid failure consequences and so forth have already been classified as non-insurable by the major insurers in South Africa. So Sasria followed suit. But I don't think it's as automatic as that. First for Sasria to do so and for us to prepare and respond.
Well, I was about to say, I was under the impression, Volker, for someone who doesn't know the industry obviously as well as you do, that we all have insurance for unforeseen events. So is a grid collapse becoming, in the talk of insurers, a grid collapse is now becoming a foreseen event, or is it still considered unforeseen? Because otherwise, why are we paying insurance if you're not going to cover it when we need it?
Well, that's the difficulty. And we had similar issues around COVID, but let's look at that principle. Unforeseen matters are the principle of insurance. There's nothing wrong with that at all. However, and in the difficult times of when Sasria was formed, we had a lot of other kinds of terrorism in South Africa. And yes, maybe a bomb blast or otherwise was unforeseen, but the general climate of terrorism was a foreseeable event in general in South Africa and was obviously not insurable by our commercial insurers. At the time, the government stepped in and became the insurer of special risks or violence and terrorism, and became the ultimate reinsurer of Sasria, and that's in the Act. So the formation of Sasria, and when Sasria was converted to an SOE, it still states that it's a state organization and the government stands as the last port of call. Now, nobody changed the law. So now we have a situation where a foreseeable risk, which is not being insured by the insurance industry, reasonably, understandably. However, the risk has not gone away, and the reason why we have Sasria is the conditions that lead to these areas of unrest remain, and the company was formed by the government to act as the insurer of last resort. So I think we have at least one leg of the stool missing here, because while normal insurers are maybe understandably moving away from these foreseeable events, what's happening with the state? Because it was formed by the state, and we should have an answer from that side or a new answer.
The ANC is facing widespread criticism from the country's socio-political problems. Economic hardships and rolling power cuts have plunged more South Africans into poverty. But columnist Nick Headley told eNCA anchor Cindy Mabe that the country's weak opposition parties should also carry some of the blame.
It's probably refreshing for even the ruling party to hear that this is not entirely squarely on their shoulders in terms of the true state of South Africa.
I'm not necessarily trying to absolve the ruling party of blame. It absolutely should take the bulk of the criticism. It has pretty much dismantled all of the foundations of the South African economy and jobs market over the past 15 years. What I'm arguing is that opposition parties should take some of the blame because they've completely failed to offer an alternative that voters see as viable and palatable. So the DA, for example, has gone backwards. It lost 3 million votes in the 2021 local government elections compared to 2016. The only reason it's sort of held up at a decent percentages is that voters are staying away from the polls in general, and the ruling party is getting a lot less than they used to, but so is the DA. So the kind of concept, or what I'm trying to argue, is that voters don't see any alternative, so they'd rather just stay at home. And I think that's why opposition parties need to take at least some blame. They've completely failed to offer something compelling to voters.
Young people who turn 18, who are eligible to vote, would need to have an option, or at least a fair view of who is the most prospective, or rather the most best candidate to go for. You're saying that that choice is quite a difficult one to make at this stage.
More than 10 million South Africans who are registered voters just don't turn up, and that's just because they don't believe in anyone who's on the ballot sheet. And I mean, that's a huge black mark against our opposition parties, that they can't put something forward that actually resonates with voters. I think something that the DA in particular doesn't quite get is that to actually get support, you need to speak to voters in a way that resonates with their hearts and minds. You need to win people over, forge emotional connections with people. It's not at all a South African phenomenon. It's how politics works around the world.
After the break, we bring you some of the highlights of the Senzamere trial this week. Welcome back to Week in One. I'm Heidi Jokos. Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan has taken a jab at former Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter. During his appearance before Scopa on Wednesday, Gordhan spoke about how Andre de Ruyter should have focused on sorting out issues at the power utility instead of writing a book. I filed this report. South Africans are none the wiser as to who the politicians allegedly involved in corrupt activities at Eskom. Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan appeared before Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts. Gordhan was asked by MPs what he was told by then Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter regarding corruption. The minister says he knew nothing about an internal investigation instituted by de Ruyter. Gordhan says the former CEO was too preoccupied with writing a book as opposed to addressing corruption-related issues.
The few people who've gone through the book or his various articles, which I haven't, indicate this in very simple terms. The only hero in South Africa is de Ruyter. The rest of us are all fools. And only he knows what's best. Only he knows, like I said earlier on, what corporate governance means and doesn't mean. And the rest of us are still in our nappies, apparently, and need to just stand at his feet and learn from him. So there's certainly a case to be made to suggest that. Did I engage with him after the interview? I was shocked at the interview.
The minister is not disputing corruption at the power utility involving the governing party.
Eskom is not just a feeding trough for the ANC, as the former CEO alleges. There have been instances where there's been a link, and one can't deny that, between institutions like Chancellor House and some of the projects that have been undertaken. But at the same time, it's important to recognize that multinational institutions like ABB, SAP, local companies like Trillion, and the construction companies with whom some litigation and some negotiations are still continuing between Eskom and themselves, and a plethora of others and have been feeding off the Eskom situation itself.
The SIU has also told Scopa that it will continue with its investigation at Eskom. The unit will also be looking into whether or not De Ruyter breached contractual obligations in how he handled corruption allegations. Next week, security advisor to the president, Sydney Mufamadi, will appear before Scopa. Heidi Jakos in Johannesburg. The battle between President Cyril Ramaphosa and his predecessor Jacob Zuma heated up in court this week. While Ramaphosa wants the court to review and set aside Zuma's private prosecution of him before the matter is heard. eNCA senior reporter Aviwe Mtila filed this report.
It's the clash of the presidents. President Ramaphosa has taken former President Jacob Zuma to court to set aside his private prosecution against him, saying it's unlawful and the abuse of the legal processes.
If he decided to submit himself to the criminal court, he could raise the title under Section 106. But that is not to say that he's precluded from challenging the prosecution in advance, especially when his challenge is not limited to title. It's also that this is an abuse of court process. It's a prosecution for an ulterior purpose, and the prosecutor does not have any substantial interest in persisting with a vexatious and frivolous charges in a criminal context.
In turn, former President Jacob Zuma argues that these are delay tactics by President Ramaphosa and all these issues should be ventilated in the criminal trial.
He is still the president. The proceedings have commenced. Have commenced by issuing the summons. The proceedings have not been interdicted. It is Mr. Zuma who is interdicted. So it's still running. Actually, an abuse of court process is challenging the time to prosecute. This court lacks jurisdiction. It does not matter the merit.
The High Court is set to hear day 2 and the final day of the arguments on Thursday. Aviwe Mtila, Johannesburg.
So it's official, the live audio broadcast of Witness 1 in the Senzamere murder trial will be allowed. Judge Chifiwa Maumela made a ruling on Thursday that her image may not be shown in line with rules for the media on all previous witnesses. eNCA's Muluku Moloto was in court and brings us the latest.
Just after Judge Chifiwa Maumela ruled Senzamere's murder had attracted huge public attention and that the public has a right to follow this trial through the media, Zandile Khumalo took to the witness stand.
Yes, wonke ama rights wami ngifundele wona and ngakhetha ukuthi ngiqhubeke, and in the midst of everything obviously appealing was one of them.
Okay.
But I chose not to.
All my rights had been written to me, or I was told about, and I decided to proceed. And also appealing was one of them, but I decided not to. Noma ke ukundlulisa ke isinqumo lesesenziwe bekuthi ke ngakwenza lokho kodwa ngathatha isinqumo sokuthi ngingakwenzi.
Ngoba bengifuna ukuthi icala liqhubeke singalokho sichitha isikhathi.
Because I wanted the matter to proceed and not for time to be wasted.
At the same time nami ngimilana nje ngifuna ukuthi usenza athole justice.
At the same time as I am standing here, I also want Senzo to get justice.
Despite initially staying calm, Khumalo broke down as she narrated the encounter with the alleged intruders.
Are you guys even aware what you guys did to our lives? Are you guys even aware of what you guys did to us as a family on that day?
Miss Khumalo? Miss Khumalo?
The damage that you guys caused.
Miss Khumalo, you're not supposed to do that.
My mother strongly objects to this.
Khumalo told the court that she had 3 gunshots. During her evidence in chief, the 5 accused men could be seen constantly chuckling and making inaudible remarks among themselves. But the day was not without drama. Once again, the disbarred advocate Malesela Tefo tried to address the court, claiming he represents Meyiwa's brothers Fiso Meyiwa and the Orlando Pirates Football Club. The court kicked him out.
I'm appearing on behalf of Sifiso Stengle Meyiwa
the brother of the deceased.
Mr.
in this
Tefu,
matter.
there's no Sifiso Meiwa in this case. We are
Appearing
talking
on
about a
behalf of
case I
Pirates
don't have.
Management.
And please, can you
And
assist Mr.
today,
Tefu to get out of the
my
courtroom?
present, Your Lordship.
There's no Sifiso Meiwa in this case.
My present, Your Lordship, today is regarding that there is a life at stake here that I have to bring the application.
Zandile Kumalo is expected back on the witness stand on Friday for further evidence in chief led by the state. Muluku Mulot, Pretoria.
And that is a wrap for this weekend's episode of Weekend One. From myself and the team, have a great weekend.